I don't think I'm good enough to trick you by coming out here every day for 17 years. This is who I am, and I want to constantly be the best version of myself. And I sincerely apologize if I have ever disappointed someone or offended them. Two extremely basic phrases served as the foundation for Ellen DeGeneres' career. Show kindness. She appeared on American television screens every afternoon for almost 20 years. She made millions of people happy, gave away automobiles, and gave hugs to famous individuals. However, all changed in 2020. Former music workers started to voice their opinions. They related tales of intimidation, dread, and a terrifying workplace. The woman who had always advocated for kindness was charged with fostering an environment where workers were even reluctant to look her in the face. Her kingdom had fallen apart by 2022. What actually took place in the studio? Nobody could have predicted the darkness of the truth. On January 26, 1958, Ellen DeGeneres was born in Met, Louisiana. Her mother, Betty, was a real estate agent, and her father, Elliot, was an insurance salesman. However, their house was not like any other family's. It was controlled by the rigid principles of Christian Science. Her father served as the church's first reader, a position akin to that of a preacher, and he blindly adhered to the religion's precepts, leaving no opportunity for discussion. No smoking, drinking, music, swearing, expressing emotion, or taking prescription drugs. Aspirin was even prohibited. Ellen didn't visit a doctor until she was 13. They thought that prayer could resolve any issue. You were simply informed, music, that you had not prayed deeply enough if you fell ill. She was raised in an environment where expressing your feelings was forbidden, and you had to always act as though everything was all right, even when music wasn't. Then came 1973. Her parents made the decision to part ways, and they were formally divorced in 1974. At the time, Ellen was just 15 years old. She didn't anticipate it because her family was so emotionally distant. She had no idea that they were having issues. She once said that she had no idea how any member of her family actually felt. Her opportunity to have regular connections had been taken away by the Christian Science group, and the divorce permanently destroyed everything. Ellen was relocated to Atlanta, Texas, by her mother, Betty. Vance, her brother, stayed with their father in Louisiana. Music. The family had disintegrated. Ellen was compelled to assume adult duties at home, even though she was still only a teenager. Ellen had to attempt to care for her mother, who was in great suffering. Ellen had a lot of dreams when she was younger. She aspired to be a veterinarian since she liked animals. However, those dreams ran counter to her faith. Being a veterinarian required her to have confidence in science and medicine, which was unacceptable in the society she was raised in. She had a lot of inquiries about how the body operated. However, even those inquiries were prohibited. While her situation compelled her to be silent and obedient, her mind yearned to wander. She became aware of the discrepancies between what she observed with her own eyes and what adults stated. But when you're a kid and the world doesn't make sense, you have no choice except to keep those thoughts to yourself. That pressure built inside of her for years. Her mother then got married again in 1976. The family moved to Atlanta, Texas, after Betty married Roy Grundorf. With a new stepfather, a new town, and a new school, Ellen had to start over. Betty received a breast cancer diagnosis at about the same time. She had to get a mastectomy, which required medical attention and surgery. The exact teachings of their religion were incorrect. However, they were at a loss for options by that point. It turned into a moment of music that rocked their beliefs. The operation was never discussed. At the age of 16, Ellen discreetly assisted her mother in getting better. She had to take care of her wounds and work out with her mother. While the encounter strengthened the bond between mother and daughter, it also made Ellen mature once more. She was more than just a daughter now. She worked as a caretaker and a nurse. Despite the fact that she was still only a teenager, Music was attempting to manage a broken home and go through school. After that, Things started to deteriorate. Roy, Ellen's stepfather, started mistreating her. When it began, she was just 15. Pretending that it had to do with her mother's disease, he informed the girl that he needed to inspect her breasts for lumps. He used her fear and naivety. He attempted to break into her room one evening. Fearful, she fled after kicking out a window. She stayed at the hospital that night only to feel secure, but she said nothing. She didn't yet know enough about music abuse or her body to describe what was happening to her. She accused herself of being too scared to put an end to it. She didn't publicly discuss what had happened until many years later. In 2005, and then music once more in 2019, in an attempt to support others who had experienced similar things following high school graduation. Life did not become any simpler. She attended the University of New Orleans for just one semester before leaving after graduating from Atlanta High School in 1976. Instead of pursuing her intended field of study, communications, she battled to make ends meet through music. She accepted any work she could find because her parents' divorce left her without financial assistance. After working alongside her cousin Laura in a legal office, she went on to work at J.C. Penney, wait tables at TGI Fridays, paint houses, work as a music bartender, and work as a receptionist. To survive, she did everything in her power. She was quite aware of the irony of the music. She would have a net worth of more than $500 million years later. But at the time, she was just music, a young, impoverished woman trying to make ends meet. Her family's faith had been completely upended by her mother's disease. However, the quiet exacerbated the situation. The mastectomy was not discussed. Nobody discussed feelings. Ellen had to deal with everything while seeming as though nothing had occurred. She was forced to follow religious precepts that she no longer understood. She also gave up religion for the sake of music at that time. Rejecting the beliefs that had governed her life since birth, she became agnostic. Vance, her brother, made a different decision. Born in 1954, he was 4 years Ellen's senior and a Marine Corps veteran. He went on to pursue music, and in the late 1970s he rose to prominence in the New Orleans underground music scene. He was a bassist for The Cold, a band that went on to be inducted into the Louisiana Music Hall of Fame. While Ellen was stuck in unfulfilling occupations and subjected to the abuse Vance was causing, he even worked as a radio personality. Although they took different routes, they stayed incredibly music close. Despite residing in different states, the two were always there for one another. One day, Ellen had aspirations of becoming a lawyer. However, that dream was dashed by the mistreatment she experienced and music, her mother's treachery. Betty did not trust Ellen when she eventually told her mother about Roy's assault. Before Roy passed away in 1997, she lived with him for an additional 18 music years. Ellen was extremely hurt by the denial. She was employed at a law office at the time, surrounded by individuals who were meant to defend music others. But nobody stood up for her. Another tragedy occurred when I was 22. Kat Perkoff was the woman Ellen fell in love with. After their brief breakup, Ellen moved out. She saw a terrible vehicle accident one night in 1980. She was unaware that Kat was in the car at the time. At the age of 23, she passed away. When Music Ellen found out what had happened the following morning, she was utterly heartbroken. She eventually ended up sleeping on a mattress in a basement full of fleas because she could no longer afford to pay the rent. When she was at her lowest music moment, she questioned why her girlfriend had to pass away while the fleas continued to proliferate. Her first comedic routine was inspired by that idea, a call to God. It was both humorous, painful, and dark. Her career in stand-up comedy, music, was made possible by that routine. In Music, 1981, she made her debut as a comic at Clyde's Comedy Club in New Orleans. She had no experience at all, just unadulterated suffering that she turned into laughing. Music. She participated in the Funniest Person in America National Showtime competition in 1982. She prevailed, Everything was altered by that accomplishment. She moved from having jobs that required tips to becoming well-known nationwide. She started going on music tours, received an invitation to appear on HBO, and all of a sudden she was no longer struggling to make ends meet. She was making steady progress toward success with music. She relocated to San Francisco later that year in order to participate in the comedy music scene. She played several sets every night, often for no pay at all, at venues like Cobb's and the Punchline. Unlike many comedians of that era who took a stronger approach, her style music was quiet and sweet. Nevertheless, she persisted, continuously honing her voice and performance in front of critical audiences. Over time, she discovered what made people laugh and think. Then came the turning point in her life. She received an invitation to appear on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show in November 1986. She had to chase after her car on Melrose Avenue that day because she neglected to apply the parking brake. Inspired by the death of her first love, she performed her phone call to God routine when